I'm Ralph Edwards, and this edition of This Is Your Life, The Classics, is one of the very few times our subject was not surprised, and it was intentional. On January 29th, 1958, an exception was made to bring our viewers a most poignant story of a lovely star who transfixed movie fans with her lyrical beauty, only to find herself in a world of enduring tragedy. Let's relive these rare moments with this extraordinary star.
We want you to meet a beautiful lady whose life might well have served as the model for a play by Eugene O'Neill or a novel by a Theodore Dreiser. The talented star of Broadway and Hollywood, Miss Frances Farmer. Here's Hello, Frances.
Hello, Ralph.
We need not say to you, as we usually do, tonight, this is your life, Frances Farmer, no? Need we?
No, I guess not.
We know that there are periods in your life that have left unhappy scars on your memory. What then prompted you to accept our invitation to relive your life with us here, Frances?
Well, Ralph, in the first place, I want to be able to tell something of my own experiences to help people who have, I know, been in the same kind of predicament. I received so many letters. People who want hope or advice, even, which perhaps I can suggest where they can find it.
Yes.
It's that sort of thing that I wanted to do for them and for myself. I would very much like to correct some impressions which arose out of a lot of stories that were written about me, I guess, but they weren't about me. There's suggesting things that I could possibly have been doing, which I never did. I wasn't in a position to defend myself at the time these stories were published, and I'm very happy to be here tonight to let people see that I am the kind of person I am and not a legend that arose.
Right. Well, we're going to try to help you do that, Frances. Other stories accused you of being an alcoholic. Were you, Frances?
No, I was never an alcoholic.
Did you ever use dope?
No, never.
Do you want to tell us, Frances, what it was that interrupted your career and brought you to the brink of disaster?
Well, Ralph, it was a combination of quite a few things. So much had happened to me as when I became first successful as an actress. Many agonizing decisions arose that I had to make, and I just wasn't mature enough and didn't have time enough to be able to make them without time and peace to think, and I didn't have it, and I had a nervous breakdown.
Yes. As a result, you spent nearly 10 years in and out of mental institutions. Child of a broken home, filled with ambitions backed by talent and intelligence, you reached the top rung of the ladder in films and on the stage. And then the curtain comes down on a kind of oblivion, and finally it rises again on the uneasy, hard road back.
Hi, I'm Bob Dorian. And
Life has a radiant beginning, filling our parents' hearts with joy and dreams of bright promise for the future. For you, Frances, life begins in Seattle, Washington on September 19th, 1930. How old was your mother when you were born, Frances?
Well, my mother, I was the last of her children, and she was 40.
Mm-hmm. You were an exceptionally pretty baby, so your father and mother had every right to be happy at the birth of their third child. Not for long, though. Your father was your mother's second husband, and then they separated. Now, how old were you at this time, Frances?
Well, over a year old. I think I was 1 or 2 years old, as I recall.
To a child of this age, this can have no special meaning, no inkling of the seeds of uncertainty sown in a little girl's mind. But here in 1917, life is fun and full of young excitement.
It was about this time, Frances, that Mom took us to Hollywood to live.
Yes, a voice out of your childhood, but one that's been close to you always. Your sister, Edith, now Mrs. Wilmar Elliott of Portland, Oregon, and here is Dee Dee, I think you call her. Here's Dee Dee. Come on, sit down here, Bonnie. Edith, right here. Now, your mother didn't bring you to Hollywood to put you in the movies, did she, Edith?
Oh, no. But we did get into Mom scenes on the Metro lot across the street.
Oh, you did?
Our pay was the pennies that the directors threw to the children.
Yes. Well, looks like you got kind of an early start in movies there, Frances. What kind of a little girl was your younger sister, Edith?
Well, she was sweet and full of fun, good sense of humor, and loved animals. And, but you had an independent spirit from the time you were little. When, you remember the family story about when you were 4 and I was 5 and we'd had a quarrel just before bedtime. And when I was saying my prayers, and I came to the part, God bless Mama, God bless Papa, and you sat up in bed very indignant and said, don't you God bless me, Dee Dee, don't you God bless me.
Goodbye morning, I'm sure all was love and smiles
Yes,
again,
it
right,
was.
Edith? Thank you, Edith. Mrs. Elliott of Portland, Oregon. You'll see Frances later at the party in her honor at the Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel, where all her family and friends have been staying. 1927 now, Frances, the year you enter West Seattle High School, where I'm sure your name is well remembered for many reasons. When did you move back to Seattle, Frances?
Well, as I remember, I was about in the 6th grade.
Yes? Now, for the first time, you really come to know your father, don't you?
That's right. I'd never really known Dad before.
He more or less inspired you to advance in higher education, did he not?
Well, yes, he did. Dad was a wonderful man and very affectionate and also very proud of his children, and he encouraged all of us to study as much as we wanted to. At one time, I even thought I'd be a lawyer because he was a lawyer.
Yes, well, you admired him so much that in your early high school days, you did think of becoming a lawyer. That's right.
It was this ambition, I think, that made Frances a star speaker on the high school debating team for 3 years.
Well, one teacher you've often said, Frances, inspired and influenced you more than anyone else in your high school days. Here is that teacher, the Miss Chips of your life, Miss Belle McKenzie of Seattle, Washington. Keep standing here, shall we, for a moment, and tell us, Miss McKenzie, Frances's interests were now turning more and more toward writing, weren't they?
That's true, but she had many interests and many talents and an active and inquisitive mind that, tried to answer those questions of the Depression, and I think this prompted her probably to write that essay that won the National Prize that was sponsored by Scholastic Magazine in 1931, was it, Frances?
A long time ago.
Well, this essay created quite a furor all over the country, I understand. What was the title of your winning essay, Frances?
It was called God Dies.
Yes, and it opens with these startling words. No one ever came to me and said, you're a fool. There isn't such a thing as God. Somebody's been stuffing you. It wasn't murder. I think God just died of old age. When I realized that he wasn't anymore, it didn't shock me. It seemed natural and right. Well, I can see why that would disturb a lot of people coming from a 17-year-old high school girl, Miss McKenzie.
Yes, but Frances was trying to say that God helps those who help themselves, and many people didn't understand that. Nor did they understand that a young person grows up in religion as well as other things.
That's right.
And that probably hurt you.
Well, I was surprised, most of all, how other people reacted to it. It seemed to me so natural.
Well, you were consistently an honor student, Frances, editor of the school paper, sang in operettas, got your first taste of the theater as the lead in the senior play, The Queen's Husband. Thank you, Miss Belle McKenzie. Thank you. From Seattle. In the fall of 1931, Frances, you entered the University of Washington to study what?
Well, I started journalism first because my brother was a journalist, and I thought maybe I'd be a journalist instead of a lawyer.
And then you went into...
Well, then I went on into English because my first interest and love in the university was to major in English and eventually write.
Yes.
However, I got very interested in acting almost my first year, and before I knew it, I had switched over to a drama major, and I was acting ever since.
And there you come under the influence of another great teacher who guided and inspired you to future greatness on the stage and screen. The head of the School of the Drama at the University of Washington, Professor Glenn Hughes. There's Professor Hughes. What was your estimate of Frances Farmer, age 18, when she first entered drama school at the university there, Professor Hughes?
Well, of course, in the first place, she was very lovely. Secondly, she was intelligent and eager. she always had a sort of intellectual chip on her shoulder, and her dramatic talent was a bit slow in developing. But we didn't worry about that because we knew the talent was there. She was hard to cast. So it was the third year that she was with us before we found a vehicle suited to her talent to bring it out to star her. That was the Catherine Cornell role in Sidney Howard's Alien Corn. And she did a very beautiful job in that, and it started her on her starring career. The play ran 50 nights, which is a record for a college production.
It certainly is. Frances didn't finish her college course, did she, Professor Hughes?
No, we're sorry about that, but you see, the point is that while Alien Corn was running, there was something else running. A Seattle local newspaper conducted a subscription campaign, and the prize was a trip to Russia. Frances had lots of friends in the newspaper profession, and they put her name in and got subscriptions, I think, for her. I doubt if she rang many doorbells herself. I never asked her about that. But at any rate, she won, and she got the trip to Russia. The next thing we knew, she was in Moscow.
Much against your family's wishes, I think, Frances. Well, thank you, Professor Glenn Hughes of the University of Washington.
See you later.
MasterCard, or you can send check or money order to AMC Magazine, P.O. Box 2065, Marion, Ohio, 43305. That's American Movie Classics Magazine, 1-800-535-7700.
April of 1935, Frances, you set sail for Russia. How was your trip to Moscow?
Well, of course, I was very excited, as you can imagine, being able to go, first of all, to New York, and beyond that to Moscow, where the theater was a much talked about thing. The Moscow Art Theater is one of the finest in the world. And it sort of set me off on my acting career, and I thought, now, finally, I'm about to become an actress. And I stayed in New York when I got back.
Still, as it turned out, this trip had an all-important bearing on the course of your life, Frances.
On the ship coming home, you met a young medical student who introduced you to an important New York producer, Frances. Do you remember?
The voice of the college friend of yours in whose apartment you stayed in New York in that summer of 1935. She stood by you in the good years and the lean. An important New York stage, television, and motion picture actress herself. Here from New York is Jane Finn Rose. Things happened awfully fast. Won't you be seated there by Frances, Jane? After Frances met this New York producer, didn't they, Jane?
Oh, I should say they did. You know, she was tested by Paramount Pictures, and they rushed off the test to Hollywood, and, well, they liked what they saw. And before Frances even knew what had happened, I think she found herself in Hollywood being groomed for stardom.
Enough to turn any 21-year-old girl's head. But you attacked the movies, Frances, with serious intent and earnestness under the tutelage of your good friend Phyllis Lawton, Mrs. George Seaton, who's in our audience here tonight, by the way, right up there. With such pictures as Rhythm on the Range with Bing Crosby, Come and Get It with Edward Arnold, Toast of New York with Cary Grant, and Ebb Tide with Ray Milland. You're acclaimed by some critics as a successor to the great Garbo, a frightening challenge to a mere beginner, wouldn't you say, Jane?
Yes, I think so, and I think Frances felt it keenly. She was always very serious about her work, Ralph, and she didn't think she was ready. She wanted more training, and so she wanted to go to New York and get the kind of training that she thought only the New York stage could provide.
Stardom in the movies as against greatness on the stage. This mental dilemma is now your constant companion, Frances. Thank you, Jane Finn Rose of New York, for your part in your friend Frances Farmer's life. This is the world. It's not our task, Frances, to comment clinically on the tensions that have beset you since your childhood, but they've been mounting, as we've seen. A girlhood without a father in the home, the rebellion of your teenage years, brought on by the uncertainty born of the Depression, the quest for truth in your college days, which always somehow eluded you, and now a new conflict in your career as an actress. But there's still 1 hour or so of respite before the final storm unleashes itself in its full fury. These are the happy years of your marriage to Leif Erikson. Your dream of stardom on Broadway is crowned by your success in Clifford Odets' great hit Golden Boy. But somehow your world just will not hold together. Why did your marriage to Leif fail, Frances?
Well, I guess neither one of us really should have married each other. He wasn't to blame, and neither was I. We had different goals and different directions, and we realized that we'd be better to just to let the marriage go and go on our separate ways. And it was a very difficult emotional decision for both of us, but we did get divorced, and we've been divorced ever since.
In Hollywood, your friends blame you for the breakup of your marriage. Up in Seattle, your family, too, say the fault is yours. Your nerves are stretched tight, almost to the breaking point. On the sound stages, your brilliant mind fails you now, and you become more and more uncooperative, less and less competent. Resentment against you mounts in all quarters until no more parts are offered you. In loneliness and despair, you turn to drink to blot out the raging conflicts of your mind. In October of 1942, you're picked up for drunk driving in Santa Monica and are placed on probation. When you break that probation only 2 months later, you react violently to being put in jail. You're completely without funds, so your family comes to your side, and psychological tests indicate that you're suffering from schizophrenia, hallucinations, fantastic delusions, and disorganized emotions. So instead of being an alcoholic, as was so widely thought, you were actually seriously ill mentally.
So Frances was placed in a private sanitarium in San Fernando Valley.
Well, here to be at your side now, as she always has been, is your half-sister who took care of you and helped support the family in your childhood, Rita, Mrs. James Will of Anaheim, California. Here's Rita. You sit down there by Frances, Rita. Why don't you go around, just sit beside Frances for a moment. How long did Frances stay in this sanitarium, Rita?
Oh, about 3 months, I think. The patients there were given a great deal of freedom, and one day Frances just walked out from the sanitarium and appeared at my house in Santa Monica. Oh, it was 15 miles distant, and she walked every bit of the way.
And after that?
And after that, my mother came down from Seattle and took her back with her north. And none of us fully realized at the time that Frances was a very sick girl.
You want to tell us what happened then, Frances?
Well, you know, I didn't think then, and I still don't, that I was actually sick, but there were so many people who seemed to think I was mentally ill that I just had to find out why and find out whether it was my fault, what was happening. You know, if you get treated like a patient, why, you have to act like one, and these things just pushed me a little too far, and it led to conflicts and strife with my mother. She thought I needed more care, and so she had me committed to the Western State Hospital in Washington.
This was on March 23rd, 1944, and with your hospitalization, having been legally declared mentally incompetent, you lose all your civil rights. We're to be in and out of that institution for the next 6 years. How you fight to regain your health and how you finally win a new life, we'll learn in just a moment. Little Frances.
Well, Ralph, it was very much like anyone else is admitted to a public institution. They don't have means for individual psychiatric care. There are only so many beds available. I stood in line with 15 or 20 girls like myself in the hospital for one reason or another. We received shots or hydrotherapy baths or electric shock treatments, and this was supposed to relax the tensions and keep us quiet, which it did. I don't blame the hospital at all. I think they did everything in their power to take care of the enormous number of people they had, but I really don't think it helped me much.
Now, of course, had you had money, you could have had psychiatric...
Well, that's the problem with people who have no money at all. There's no other recourse except to an institution like this, and it means that you have to be able to afford proper analysis that could help.
Have you any thoughts, Frances, on how your cure came about, on your recovery?
Well, it took me a long time going this way, and finally I realized that I would have to do it for myself. Because first of all, any cure, to be effective, has to be based on faith in oneself, which means faith in God. If you don't have that, why, all the tensions that are relaxed till the end of the world won't solve your problems for you, the reason why you are emotionally disturbed. I was able, in a kind of a grim and very lonely battle, to find this faith for myself, or re-find it, and to hang on to it. And it eventually led me out of the hospital and back to church, which I think is the only place where you can find a really potent answer to the problems of the spirit in this world that we live in now.
Your faith is rewarded when you're discharged from the Western State Hospital as recovered. Your civil rights are restored in March of 1951. Your first concern here in 1951, Francis, is your mother, so you get a job in the Olympic Hotel in Seattle. What did you do there?
Oh, I was taken on as a clerk in the valet department.
When your mother goes to live with your sister Rita, there's nothing to hold you in Seattle, so in 1954, you take a bookkeeping job in a photographic shop in Eureka, California. And there you meet a man who's to play an important part on your road back, a radio management consultant from San Francisco. Here he is, your personal manager, Mr. Lee Mikesell. Here's the one. You urged Frances to return to the movies and the stage, didn't you, Lee?
That's right, Ralph. I did.
Yes, indeed.
She was rather reluctant at first. And it was only after she went to San Francisco and was an employee of the Sheraton Palace Hotel that a columnist there identified her.
Yes.
And after that, the International News Service, IP, UP, and AP all wanted stories. So we gave them to them. We got a flood of mail, and that was the beginning of it.
And to help you answer that mail were your neighbors. And here they are from San Francisco, Mr. and Mrs. Harry Haste. Here are Mabel and Harry. You knew Frances briefly in Seattle, didn't you,
Yes,
Harry?
I did, Ralph. And when our apartment manager told me there was a celebrity in the house, we got together.
And then the flood of mail started. Well, all I could do was try to help to pitch in. And I've been doing it ever since.
Well, your friend Mabel may have taken on quite a job, Francis, because we've wired 125 Hollywood producers, urging them to look in on This Is Your Life tonight and to keep you in mind for an important dramatic role. So it looks like you're going to be a busy gal, too, Francis, dashing from interview to interview. And we know that you've been depending on your friends for transportation, and so Pace wants to give you a helping hand. And so does the Edsel division of the Ford Motor Company by presenting you with this beautiful 1958 two-door Edsel Pacer. With his exceptional power, ease of handling, and above all, dependability, this Edsel will get you wherever you want to go. How about that?
Oh, thank you very much.
This car is your very own to drive home tonight, Francis. And now, as your sisters and friends gather around you, I'm sure they join me in wishing you only the best in your new career. Mom and Dad, were they alive today, would be mighty proud of their girl. Now, we know that all over the country, millions of people are waiting to welcome you to the screen and to the stage. You've already distinguished yourself on television, on The Ed Sullivan Show, on Playhouse 90, and on NBC's Matinee Theater, as well as at the Bucks County Playhouse in the Chalk Garden. You'll be equally distinguished, we're sure, on Broadway soon because you've been offered a number of plays, notably the starring role in Eddie Dowling's production of The Passions of the Women of Glyn. Congratulations to you. Your life certainly proves the great need for sympathetic understanding of the mentally ill as patients, not outcasts. And so, Francis Farmer, one book is closed now, its pages sealed, but another lies wide open before you. With faith in God and confidence in yourself, it'll be a great book. This is your life. Good night. God bless you.
This was one of our most rewarding and touching shows. In speaking with a family member regarding our adding Francis Farmer's life to our classics, I was told that it would be wonderful to set the record straight once again as to what Francis's life really was. We're pleased you could join us for this show and hope you'll join us for the next edition of This Is Your Life, the Classics.